Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Hot 97 virtual Earn My Vote Election 2020 Town Hall. I am your host, TT Torrez, and our main topic tonight is the importance of the 2020 election and how our audience vote will be earned between now and November. We have an amazing panel of guests who have joined us for this town hall. First, let me welcome our special guest tonight and a good friend of mine, Figaro, political analyst and the host of the Straight No Chaser podcast. Hi, Tez. Also, I would like to invite my boy, Mysonne, to the show, raptivist, rapper, activist, and co-founder of Until Freedom. He has also been on the front line fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor. Mysonne, I know it's been a crazy day for you today, but I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
And another one of my girls, New York City Council member, Vanessa L. Gibson. Vanessa, it is always a pleasure speaking with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, sis.
And also, I would like to welcome Stephanie L. Young, Chief Officer for Culture Communications and Media Partnerships at When We All Vote. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I would like to also welcome Alain Berrquet, political and digital marketing strategist. Alain, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you. I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And I believe we have some more guests joining us throughout the night, so stick around for that. Oh, here he is, our special guest. He's no stranger. Cordae, two-time Grammy Award-nominated artist. Cordae, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you guys. Honored to be here with you all.
It's an honor to have you. Once again, thank you all for being here tonight and giving us some of your precious time. These past few months have been tough on many people. The loss of lives due to the pandemic, civil unrest, and what feels like lack of leadership in our government has all of us feeling anxious and nervous about this upcoming election. I would like to first kick it to you, Cordae. I want to start off tonight's discussion with you because you have a young audience. You have a young fan base. A lot of them will be voting for the very first time in this upcoming election. What do you see as the single most important issue for young people, particularly young people of color?
Can everybody hear me first and foremost? Am I good?
Yes.
Is my connection audio good?
Yes, we can hear you good.
Got it. So as pertaining to what's the biggest issue for young Black people as far as just in general in America, or more so as it pertains to voting specifically?
As it pertains to voting.
Well, I feel as though and I don't want to speak for everyone. I feel as though it's just the lack of information, and a lot of times us as young people, we don't feel like there is a particular candidate who has our best interests at heart a lot of the times. And so and most young people only, when they think of election and voting, they only think of the presidential, or more so with voting for your local sheriff, vote for your local councilman, your congressmen and women, and senators, equally if not even more important, because that directly affects your lifestyle. And so I just feel as though that's what really needs to be spoken about for sure.
Do you feel like the young people, your audience, your fan base, has been engaged by either political party?
I don't believe so, to be completely honest, because it doesn't really seem, and again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but it doesn't seem like either political party is really for us. It's more so of us voting for we just got to get Trump out of office. You know, that's just the reality of it. Just because he's just the complete opposite of what we need in office right now, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, you speak very vocal about the political process. I've seen you on the front lines of the Breonna Taylor marches. So you and I hope you don't mind me saying your girlfriend, who is a tennis superstar, have been the face of social justice in terms of young Black artists. And I wonder, by doing that, is that scary for you to really put your brand out there? Because you do have a lot of people that say, keep politics out of music, keep politics out of sports. And I see that you two really go hard to represent for your generation.
Yeah, I don't really think about that stuff because before I'm, Cordae the artist, I'm a Black man before I'm anything. And I was actually arrested with my brother Mysonne in here, FTG. We were both spent a day in jail together. Um, and more so, it's more so of a responsibility. I have to do this. I was protesting in 2016 with Kaepernick. I was protesting during the Michael Brown and Philando Castile. So these are just things that's just embedded within my DNA. And because I've done the research and I've done the history, I've always been very indulged in my people's history. And so when I see these same things that's going on now, that's been going on the last 400 years, to be quite frank, it's just super disheartening. And I have to use my platform, and I just not even that, I just have to be out there because, again, before I'm an artist, before we are who we are Black people, and we have responsibilities as Black people to speak on what's right.
Mm-hmm. How can young people really engage, for those who want to be a part of the political process, for those who want to have their voices heard? What is the first step in doing that?
um I guess the first step is to become aware, to do your research, to actually know what's going on in the world versus just taking in someone else's opinion or listening to someone else. Like, do your own research. And we are in the information age, so the information is out there. So that's step one. Do your research. Two, take actionable items. Go out there and protest in what you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
in your local community. And again, vote for your local leaders, vote for your local sheriff, for your local councilman, superintendent. We have a say in these things, and these are the people who directly affect your lifestyle even more so than the president. But it's just, yeah, become informed.
Yeah. And let me just say this, not all information out there is good information or truthful information. So you got to be able to discern what's real and what's not real. And we've seen digital suppression happen over and over again. We see people purposely promoting fake news on social media. So we have to be very intelligent and very smart and very diligent in seeking truthful information. I'm sorry, we can't hear
Oh,
Cordae. Okay, there you go.
my bad. Exactly. We just have to be thorough with the research, and then doing the knowledge, and thorough research, because like you said, there's a lot of fake news out there, there's a lot of biased news out there. So we gotta go through it and form our own opinions and have discussions with our peers and with our our elders, and even with the youth, the people who can't even vote. So when it is their turn, it's that. So just do your own research.
Yeah. I want to encourage everyone to please post your questions inside the chat. If you have a question you would like me to ask any of the panelists, please submit your questions right here in the chat. And I promise you, I will try to get to all of the questions tonight. So anyone can answer this question. I want to open it up for everybody. Why is this election different from any other previous ones? Who wants to tackle that? Okay, I'm gonna call y'all out. Tez, you gotta unmute.
Well, thank you so much. I'm more than happy to ask that. To be quite honest with you, this election is not different than any other election. That has been the talking point that I know that operatives for whatever reason or however, whoever came up with the idea to say that fear would be the defining motivator for individuals to get to the polls, with the idea that this is so consequential because we must get out President Trump. And although that is true, what I don't agree with that messaging is it makes folks believe that the only thing that is important is getting Trump out. It takes away from the fact that you need to understand you need to vote every 2 years. It takes away from the fact that your state election is just important as your federal election. It takes away from the fact that the local, what's going on in your local politics is just as important as the federal side. It takes away from the fact that we also have to demand that the things that we're looking for also come from this Democrat Party. I say all the time that if we look at fear as the only motivating factor to get people to the polls, we've already lost the race. The reason why that is key is because when you look at the Republican side, and you look at folks who have always had power in this country, had traditionally had power in this country, who do you think is more scared, TT? Do you think that those who have always had power are in fear of losing power?
Absolutely.
Never had power in the first place, afraid of losing power they never had? It's almost like telling someone who's homeless, oh, be afraid because you'll lose your house. People that have never had the power, they're not afraid of losing something they never had. So I say that the Republican side or the conservative side are those that are up against, that are pushing the voter suppression. They're more afraid than we can ever be because we're not accustomed to having power. So when that idea was, let's use fear as the only motivating factor, let's not talk about the fact that every election is important. The fact that after November 3rd, November 4th is just as important as the 3rd and just as important as it will be 2 or 3 years from now. So I understand that it's important, but me as a trainer and as someone involved in politics year round, 365 days, I think it's important that we understand that we can no longer just focus on one thing. You know, we always have to look at the broader picture and how do people get involved on the long term and understand that this is a long ball game, not a one-time thing. And that is where I believe we've been missing when we're talking about engaging Black folks in particular.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. You know, the organization that I'm a part of, When We All Vote, is a nonpartisan organization launched by Michelle Obama in 2018. And our whole purpose, our goal, our mission is to change the culture around voting. So to Tezlyn's point about one election being more important than the other, it is so critical that people understand that their power is in every single election. And the moment you miss one election, you are taking away from your power and from the voice of the people. And you are allowing other people to step in and make decisions for you, for your family, and for your future. And I think to the other point that was made earlier in the conversation about there being an information barrier, people not understanding the greater importance of what these positions of these elected officials mean for your everyday life is so critical to help people understand, especially young people, especially 18 to 24-year-olds, especially first-time voters, so that they can start to get into the habit of participating in our democracy, not just when they vote, not just when they protest when something bad happens, but how do we continuously stay involved in the conversation? How do we hold people accountable that are not working for the people? And how do we ensure that our voice is really a part of not only strengthening, but protecting our democracy in every which way that you can? Because if you have 47% of American people voting in a general election, you're talking about less than half of Americans coming to vote. That is not the will of the people in any way, shape, or form. And you cannot have a democracy if the people are not a part of it. It is a two-way street, it's a relationship, and both parties have to play in. And I'm not talking about political parties, I'm talking about the people and the people that are elected. They have to engage with each other, and nothing will be done. We will not see any changes if you only vote, if you only protest. You got to do it all. You got to protest, then you got to go to the ballot box. And then after the ballot box, then you have to hold those elected officials accountable. You have to make sure that you understand the issues that are impacting your life each and every day, because trust and believe, there's people in other communities, there's people in different places that are continuously advocating on their behalf. And working on Capitol Hill for the amount of time that I did, I understand each and every day there are people knocking on those congressmen and women's doors demanding certain actions, demanding certain things, and they know that they have to be beholden to them because they are voters. And I think it's so critically important for Black and brown people to understand that that is where a lot of our power comes from. And if we don't use it, then people don't take us. They don't take our community seriously. They don't help our communities in the way that they need to because they know that we will not hold them accountable. And I just want to add one more piece, and then I'll be quiet. I'm sorry to go.
No, go ahead.
I think it's so important to understand that all of the voter suppression tactics, all of these tactics that we see day in, day out, so blatant. If your voice was not important, people would not be going to the great lengths in which they are to stop you. And they're going to many, many great lengths. So it's time for us to do all that we can. And for those who already know, to pull those behind us and around us into the fold as well.
Do you think that everything that's currently going on is an eye-opener for us to really realize that in order to make the changes, we got to participate in every election? Do you think this is an eye-opener? Everything that's going on is an eye-opener for not just Black Americans, but young Americans and people that didn't participate in the political process until it became a presidential election?
Yeah, I mean, I think people can see now that every elected official actually impacts your life. If you live, I'm from Atlanta. So if the mayor says that COVID-19 is real and you need to wear a mask and you need a social distance, and you can't have 20,000 people gathered in a restaurant at the same time, but then the governor says COVID-19 is a hoax, it's not that real and doesn't matter. I think everybody can feel the tension now in a way that you never could before. When the consistent unrest in the streets, we consistently see police violence, police brutality. You consistently see no repercussions for any actions as we're seeing today in Kentucky. When you consistently see the same things over and over again. And I just feel like we're in a pressure cooker right now. We're living in a global pandemic. We're living in a time like no other. But it is really pointing out the challenges that we're facing in this country, that we as a people have the power to help change, and then B, how every elected official makes an impact on your life, from if your kid goes to school in a global pandemic or not, from if you have to do distance learning or not, for if you actually can sit in the hospital with a loved one who is sick or not. There are so many people who are impacted in ways in which they've never been impacted before and can see how government has an impact on your life. And to choose not to be political is still a political choice, because you're making some sort of statement and you're just out of the conversation in a way that I don't think you're intending to be. So I really hope that this has been a wake-up call. We've had to sit with ourselves personally, right, in a multitude of ways. And I think as a country, as American citizens, as people in this nation, we have had to sit in this moment, as uncomfortable and crazy as it has been. And I think for white people, this has been a moment for them to say, wow, this has all been happening for centuries and years and years and years. And I had really no idea. But now you're sitting at home and you're seeing what people of color have had to deal with.
They had an idea. They had an idea what's happening, but the choice to do something about it or stand up against it is now in the forefront of most people minds who never paid attention to it before.
You can't run away from it now. You can't.
Right. Exactly. Tez, you and I have spoken about this on previous shows before. Is there anything wrong with demanding something for your vote? Demanding a politician, a political person earns your vote versus giving it away? I've been a registered Democrat for many, many years, but I treat my vote like an independent. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm an independent voter myself. I have always talked about the idea, even before this election, that we must demand something in exchange when we talk about our vote. It's great to say that, we're nonpartisan and we do certain things and, we're independent. But the reality is anybody in politics with any type of power is usually associated to one party or the other. Most people spin the narrative to one party or the other, obviously. And I'm going to talk specifically about what I advocate the most for. I'm going to talk about Black people, not necessarily people of color or bunching everybody up in one group. I'm going to talk specifically about Black people because that's obviously the experience that I live and what I've advocated for years. When you talk about Black people in particular, who have over 90% voted for a Democrat Party, and you talk about the idea that the fact that when you know that Black people go to the polls, more than likely they will be voting for straight ballot down Democrats. To me, I feel that that takes away our leverage. When I look at the Hispanic community, which pretty much votes equally among both parties, let's look at the Democrat primary, for example. You had Hispanic voters in Florida who voted for Joe Biden, but Hispanic voters in California who voted for Bernie Sanders. There was no one idea that all people from a certain demographic vote one way or the other. You have a Hispanic community in Florida who are very conservative, Cuban Americans that are anti-abortion that would never vote on a Democrat Party, on a Democrat Party ticket. So because they vote consistently on both sides, it's allowed them more leverage. So it's great to say that you can make a demand and let them know what it is that you want, but politics only understands power. And so until we diversify our power or be more strategic in our power, and I'm not saying more of us, need to become Republicans or, are more or less Democrat. What I'm saying is that there is nothing wrong asking for a demand. A lot of folks say it's too late to do that. But when we look at how do we move forward past the election? When we look at how many people in the swing states are actually, black folks, are people that we can use that leverage. I don't hear a lot of talking about how many black people are in Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. How do we use that to weaponize our vote and to make a demand and not feel guilted into moving one way or the other? The same way we say that you have a responsibility to learn, your issues and what you should be doing. Well, so do these politicians. They have a responsibility to educate their community. They have a responsibility to make sure that they're reaching out. They have a responsibility to get off their high horse and come down to these streets and talk to people in a way that they understand. We are talking about people in Congress who are all multimillionaires. We know no one is broke in Congress, Democrat, Republican, independent, across the board. So when we act as if it's just been one party that has been focusing on voter suppression, and we ignore the Democrat Party, who has been very involved in voter depression, which means people not feeling as if their votes are not valued, being taken advantage of, then both of those things play into why people are not in the polls. Not coming to the polls. Right now, there's no politician or pastor that can come out and tell everybody to cease fire and stop doing what they're doing in the streets right now. You know why that is, TT? Because that power has been lost. It has been taken advantage for far too long from the churches, from the pulpits, and at the end, and from the political side. And at the end of the day, people have lost hope. And at the end of the day, they've lost the idea that their elected officials are listening to them. And those who work hard on the ground, state and local politicians, do not receive the support from the national party as they should. It's people out there working their ass off, city council folks, state, that never receive the support from the national party. And so I blame them. Everything that I say about a Democrat that I criticize is because I've only worked for Democrats, and it's what I've witnessed in the state of Florida, how they do not support these elected officials. So this whole thing is a larger conversation probably to have outside of this, but I think it is time that we start looking at being a little bit more strategic and using that leverage and actually getting something for it on paper, not just in talk.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's the only way that you're going to be able to continue to move the ball down the yard, is by demanding something and not just accepting whatever is handed to you. Councilmember Gibson, I want to take it to you because you've been shaking your head the whole time that Tez has been talking, and I see RBG in your background. With the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I want to know, what does that mean for voters? Because she really led the way to fight against voter suppression and women's rights. And we see how Trump is saying that he will have a nominee on the table, I believe, by Saturday, 5 p.m. He's pushing really hard to get someone in there before the election. What's your thoughts on that? You got to unmute.
Hey, sorry. Hey, everyone.
Hey,
Peace and blessings to all of you. It's great to be on. Thank you, TT and Hot 97. I think I join with many Americans and certainly many women across the country and women of color in recognizing the life, the legacy, the labor of love of the Honorable Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a daughter of Brooklyn, affectionately known as the notorious RBG, and really all that she stood for. A member of the Supreme Court for over 25 years. She fought for worker protection, women's rights, women's health care, LGBT rights, affirming so many of the values that we fundamentally believe in. And if you know of her story and you read her bio, she struggled as a Jewish woman during her time. One of the few women in her law school class not given opportunities when she applied for employment at law firms because she was a Jewish woman. I mean, a lot of the struggles that she survived have allowed us to be where we are today. And even in her last hours of struggling with cancer, she was still working from the hospital bed, from rehab. She was still fulfilling her duties. And we're grateful. A lot of us feel that we really stand on her shoulders because we recognize that because of her path, a lot of us are able to be elected officials and members of the judiciary today. Here in my county, Bronx County, we've elected more women and women of color than ever before at the highest appellate level, Supreme Court, criminal, civil, housing court. We have a number of distinguished members of color, and it's really a profound time when you talk about people looking like you. When you go into the courts and you see the court officer, the defense attorney, the judge, you want to see a reflection of you. And, you know, Justice Ginsburg fought the good fight. And even before she died, her declaration was that the next president.
So if that doesn't happen, as we know, they are pushing to get someone in there.
Right.
If it doesn't happen, what does that mean? What does that mean for voters? What does that mean for the people?
Well, it means that if President Trump nominates someone on Saturday who we fundamentally believe is the exact opposite of what a Supreme Court justice will be, this person will be conservative, will not support a woman's right to choose, will be a pro-choice, will be anti-everything. That person, once nominated and affirmed by the Senate, that person has a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. And that's not a good thing for us. That means that a majority of the Supreme Court members today will be on the side of being more conservative and not progressive. And so that's a bad thing. It's going to set us back. It's going to take us back in terms of rolling back all of the things that we have fought so hard for.
As a local elected official in New York City, what are you hearing from your constituents in the Bronx about issues that matter most to them in this election cycle?
Wow, what have I not heard? I think as a result of COVID and a very painful budget we passed at the City Council in July, we got no federal support. And I appreciate the sister talking about, you know, the federal government's been a failure. We had a $9 billion budget deficit we had to close. We cut agencies to the bone. Sanitation, $100 million. Parks Department, $80 million. So when you talk about working, we're cleaning parks, we're picking up trash. We're doing things we normally have not done because budgets have been decimated. And a lot of that is really attributed to a lack of leadership at the federal level and the city of New York having to, you know, do what we needed to do to balance a budget. And then you also had the horrible murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and you saw a wave of protests and demonstrations. I was out there with my son and many of you, and we were protesting because to be Black in America should not be a death sentence. And we've seen far too many brothers and sisters being killed while in police custody across the country, right in New York City, and it's not acceptable. It means that our work is not done. It means that we are not only struck with the pandemic of COVID-19, but the pandemic of systemic racism for 401 years, where Black lives continue to not matter. It's funny because people often say, well, all lives matter. We can't say all lives matter until Black lives matter. Why do we have to tell you that Black lives matter just to reaffirm that we are equal just as everyone else when we're not being treated that way? So people are very upset. The violence this summer, TT, was off the chain. Just earlier this morning, it was an 8-year-old girl that was shot in the South Bronx. Like, it's terrible. People don't feel safe. They feel like we're going back to the 1980s in New York City, and that's not a good place to be in.
Yeah. Mysonne, I want to speak to you and Alain because as Black men in America, you know, what message do you have for young people, young Black men who think their vote doesn't matter because they just simply do not trust the government? You know, we see a lot of people tweet A lot of people comment on Instagram after government and feel like the government hasn't done much in their lives to date. We see, Mysonne, you and I come from the same community, and we see the candidates, and we see that a lot of the men, Black men in particular, have said and have tweeted that they would rather just sit out and not vote because they don't trust Biden because of his stance on the crime bill. They hate Trump. Is that the appropriate thing to do, to just sit out and not vote?
I personally don't believe that even makes common sense. It's for you to not to vote in an election where ultimately you still have to follow the rules doesn't make sense. Like I tell people all the time, it's not like you're not going to pay taxes. It's not like you're not going to deal with whatever health care they put into office. You're not going to deal with the Supreme Court justices. You're not going to have to deal with prison reform. You're not have to deal with the laws that they push in. So for you not to vote just basically just says that you get, without even having an understanding or having any say. So that's not really common. I do understand the frustration, just being in Kentucky and just pretty much just leaving protests and being outside with hundreds and thousands of people and seeing how a Black woman's life was just taken for granted, and knowing all the protests, knowing all the people who have said that, the officers who killed her need to be arrested, just understanding what we've sacrificed. I understand how sometimes things like that take the air out of the balloon, and you just believe that this system doesn't work for us. It's just not meant for us. And when you see a Black man like Daniel Cameron, who stands up there and allows this to happen and justifies a woman being killed in her home, I do understand that frustration because I shared it. For a minute, I sat there and I looked and I said, this system is not for us, and I still believe that, as I said. But what I also believe is that we have to do something different. We have to do something different. We definitely have to look at this election. And and I was listening to Tezlyn and we saying they have to earn our vote, and that makes sense to me. But when I look at both parties, it's no way that I can vote for a party that has 1% of people that represent me. It's just no way that common sense to tell me that these people have any of my best interests at hand. When I look, like Vanessa Williams just said, it's hundreds, and we have the most Black women and women of color that we've ever had on one party. Unfortunately, it doesn't go all the way up, and we look at these presidential candidates and we say, okay, these doesn't make sense, but we understand that there's a certain party that actually represents our demographic. Like, I know Vanessa Gibson. I can go to Vanessa's office. I can go to Ruben Diaz's office. I can go to Michael Blake's office. I can sit down with Jumaane Williams. I can actually have conversations and push legislation through these people because I have direct contact, and I actually know that they know what's going on in my hood. They know exactly what I'm dealing with. They come from the exact thing that I've come from. So unfortunately, I don't think any of these parties actually represent us properly. But until we establish something that actually represents us, I have to put my faith in being able to push people that I know, for the most part, they understand the reality that I'm dealing with. Of course, I want to get the best I can. That's why when people say it's too late, for me, it's like, yes, I love when Ice Cube says earn our vote and make these people pay. But now you're telling them to earn it between Trump and Biden, which Kamala Harris, who has a whole cabinet full of Black people that I know, who I'm able to have conversations with, who I'm able to get on the phone with, who I'm able to push and say, yo, we don't really like this, who I'm able to sit down at tables with. And, in contrast to Trump's cabinet, who only call us in when it's going to benefit them. They're going to say, okay, we need a photo op today.
But so there's a lot of people, though, that feel that the Democrats have been doing that for a long time.
But I'm not saying they haven't.
I'm going to do this. But then when the campaigning is done, they go back to rocking us to sleep. So how can this be different?
I think they both do it. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that I'd rather fight, because I'm going to fight regardless. That's what it is for me. Either one of these presidents, I have to fight. But I'd rather fight Biden and Harris than have to fight Trump, because I see what the fight with Trump is. It's not even a fight. Trump is gangster in the White House. He's pretty much gangster. And I'm putting me and my people in order. I don't care about the rest of y'all. We gonna get some money. We're gonna lock people up. We might let a couple of y'all. We're gonna let 1,700 of y'all go, but we're gonna lock up 17,000. And y'all think we did something.
But let me ask you this. Biden's crime bill impacted a lot of Black men. And the impact of that crime bill still does hurt a lot of Black men to this day. How can he make his wrongs right?
I mean, you got to say you did wrong. I mean, listen to me. I'm trying to be closest to politically correct as I can here. I am not a Biden fan. If I was voting for that ticket, I would vote more for Kamala, and she has things that's questionable. But I'd rather see a Black woman in office and give her opportunity than give anybody else. That's just how I personally feel about it. Because I watch white men send us to jail for years. I watch everybody send us to jail for years. So I'm gonna give a Black woman an opportunity. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not a Joe Biden fan, but like I told them when I sat down on conference calls with them, is that you have to atone what you did. You got to admit you did, and you got to tell us what you're going to do now to change it. You got to say, okay, I did this, and this is what I'm going to do now to change it. You got to talk directly to us. Like Tezlyn said, I'm here for Black people. I love everybody else. And you know, my main focus is Black people. Because that's all I've been my whole life. I don't know most of the other things. And I've been surrounded by a lot of brown people. So I would say that I represent my sons are Puerto Rican and Black. So I would say that I represent Black and brown people. So for the most part, those are my direct people that I'm here for. So you got to talk to me and you got to talk to us. You got to tell me how you are going to directly change my life. I understand what people say about Joe Biden. I'm not a Joe Biden fan. I'm not going to sit there, but I know people in his camp that I can push, that I can get on the phone with him and say, yo, he did this. And I know they're going to be back there fighting. It's nobody in Trump's house that's fighting for us.
Alain, the token Black people, I already know what you're going to say.
Okay, so
hold it already. I already know what you're going to say. Alain, I see you over there shaking your head. I'm going to give you the opportunity to jump in.
I totally agree with what Brother Mysonne is saying, and I think after the ruling today on the Breonna Taylor, actually, I'm happy that I'm here because hip hop is the reason why I've been getting through a lot of things that's been happening in society. You know, for me, I think I came here to have critical and courageous conversation. You know, for me, I just think our government tolerates racism. We tolerate it. Because literally everybody else, Black men specifically, have been punished. We've been sent to jail. But it seems that people who do harm to Black people, I'm not just talking about law enforcement, I'm talking about in other areas, seem to don't get punished. And for me, when I think about Black men trying to express themselves and see all what has been happening is that we've been shouted down. We're not allowed to speak against particular elected officials because this election is just so important. I think my question to other people is, what has the Democratic Party, or any party for that matter, done to earn the vote of Black people? I think we need to go back to history. History is the greatest teacher, right? In 1638, when Black folk first came over here in reference to slavery, in 1638, the colony of Maryland put out an edict. And it basically said that Black people will not be allowed to enjoy the fruits of white society. How true is that comment now? When it comes to Black men, we have a shorter lifespan. We are suspended and expelled more in school. We are underpaid, first to get fired. We die at a higher rate, more than any other demographic. And the data shows that Black men will fall back into poverty, even if you're born into wealth. Black men are suffering. And to be honest, Trump is a dangerous man. It's not Trump that scares me. It's his team that scares me. There's somebody by the name of Brad Pascal. And the reason why I'm here is because I'm very passionate about technology and Black tech. Ms. Figaro said that, this election is not the same. I'm going to push back and I disagree. This is going to be the second election now, or rather third election, where the internet is going to decide who wins. Well, there's a couple of things, right?
Because I also think there is a lot of voter suppression that happens on the internet, and a lot of misinformed information, digital suppression, operatives that deter a lot of voters.
And that's very true. there's a couple of documentaries that I can point people in the right direction to. Netflix has 2 documentaries. One, The Great Hack. And basically, The Great Hack really breaks down the Cambridge Analytica scandal and understanding the tools used by the Trump administration to win the election. And there's another documentary called The Social Dilemma. And it basically shows you how these big companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, how social media uses your data and mines it and makes money off of it. For me, there's a documentary on PBS called Zero Tolerance. And basically what it shows is how Trump weaponized and turned immigration into a political weapon. I implore anybody that's listening now to go and listen to that. But let me just get back to Black men in particular. And I was hoping that somebody in the Biden campaign would be on.
Had someone that was supposed to be on, because I do have a lot of questions from that campaign. I'm not sure if they did join, but I don't see them here. But I wanna go to Tez, because I want to give Tez I want her to respond to this, because in 2016 you did serve as the National Racial Justice Director for the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I really want to know, do you think Biden, Harris, or any other political candidate is prepared to take on issues of racial justice in an aggressive and effective way?
Okay, let me first, and again, I want to, because this is one of the things when we talk about voter suppression and we talk about misinformation on the internet, I just want to clarify the statement that was just made when the brother referenced that I said this election is not the same. That's not what I said. I said that this election is as important as every election, and that just kind of gives an example how we hear something and then we translate it and we put misinformation out there, which is another issue that we're dealing with the Breonna Taylor case. I work for Attorney Crump as well. So I just wanted to clarify that I did not say that it's not the same. We can have a whole conversation on the differences. There's clear differences. And I think a lot of that is obviously attributed to Trump. But to answer your question, I am of the same, what Mysonne was talking about, the same mindset that this campaign has still yet, when we talk about Biden, has still yet to atone publicly for the 94 crime bill or any of the issues that people have concern with. The 94 crime bill to me is very real. It's not something that was in the past or, oh, it was back in 94. No, these are friends of mine that are still on probation right now from first-time nonviolent offenses, people that just got off probation in June. And we are still in a moment of, I don't even want to use the excuse, TT, of tone deaf. I'm feeling some type of way, y'all, because again, for us that are, especially on this Breonna Taylor case, this is a really tough day. For probably not the best day to try to be politically correct, just being honest with the folks. You know, I work for Attorney Crump. I'm his political consultant. And this is not probably the best day for me to try to be politically correct. But as you know, I'm going to give it to you straight shot, no chase. I don't work for any of the candidates, so you're only going to get the truth. When I look at Biden's, comment today saying, this is not just make sure that you're not violent, just make sure, protest and make sure that you're not violent, and not speaking to what is actually happening and what people actually feel, and calling out the institutional racism, that is a problem. At the same time, Bernie Sanders put a tweet out and said that, this is institutional racism. But TT, even working for Bernie Sanders, I know that working for him, I've called him out more than anybody publicly, not behind the scenes, but publicly. And he too was also deaf when it came to really dealing with institutional racism when he was the candidate, when he was in the forefront. Now that he's not, he speaks a little bit louder. So I do understand my brother's point. My son was saying that he is going to have more access with candidates that he know. But I have to really kind of push back on that as well, to say that although I agree with that, and I know that we'll have more access with candidates who look like us or who come from our communities, most of the folks that are out there voting don't have that access. Most of the folks out there voting, they can't pick up the phone and call. They're not on these town halls. They're not a part of these meetings. They're not engaged. They're not even invited. I've been a part of many, many meetings in the room where I sat in the room and was completely ignored. So when I look at how they feel, that their votes are not being acknowledged, that their existence is not being acknowledged, that they're not even being asked the question. I understand the frustration with saying, why would I continue to show up time and time again and not get anything in return? We all know it's not an issue about the Democrat Party offering more, being more compassionate to the things that we need. That's not the issue. The issue is the leaders not telling people how things are actually changing. Who wants to show up for somebody over and over that continues to lose? It's no point in us to keep talking about Trump as a gangster. When are the Democrats gonna get gangster? When are they gonna show up and be just as aggressive and just as hard and move and push the line like Republicans do? There are things that we can talk about that are actually changing. Saying let's just vote because our ancestors said do it. That's not enough.
Why isn't that enough anymore? Tell me why that isn't enough anymore.
Because at the end of the day, you're looking at a generation starting from at least the X-Millennials, what I call part of the Generation X and a part of a generation, the next generation, the millennial generation. It's a generation that talks back. It's not a generation that just goes along to get along. It's not a generation that's just going to do something because you say do it, or going to be guilted in it because you say do it. At the end of the day, where is the bag? Put it on paper. And there are actually some good things that we can talk about. We can talk about that since the murder of George Floyd, who I served as the senior advisor to the George Floyd Foundation, there have been over 100 cities that have enacted police reform. Why are Democrats not talking about that? Why are they not saying, hey, you know what? What we see today with Breonna Taylor is very disappointing, but also know that there has actually been real reform. Why are they not talking about what's going on in California and all of the police reform that has happened with there? Why are they not talking about, hey, you know what? We may not be there in every state, but in California, they have implied immunity. Why are they not talking about, do you know that in California right now, if you vote, there's something called Measure J that makes sure that some of the income from the community goes to the community and not all to policing? Why are they not talking about this? Why are they not saying, hey, elderly, if you're elderly or you're sick, stay at home. But if you're young, crawl over glass, wear a mask, and get to the polls the same way they're doing right now, protesting. Yeah. These are things that I blame our leaders for. It's enough of talking about Trump. It's enough of talking about what he's doing, what he's supposed to do. He's talking to his base, whether we like it or not. He's motivating his base. He's talking to his base. He's pushing the line for his base. At some point, Democrats have to realize, black, brown, whatever you want to call it, have to realize that until they go just as hard, it will not render the same results. And that is why you do not see people as motivated as they need to be. If I ask you, what is the I'm going to shut up when I say this, but this is just the truth. If I ask you, what is Biden's campaign slogan? How many people would actually know what that is other than save the heart and soul of America? Most people don't know that. But if you ask them, what is Trump's campaign slogan? Everybody knows, hate or love him, that is make America great again. That means there's a messaging problem, a disconnect on what we are going to offer folks once you get in office. There's a branding issue, a messaging state of emergency that they must re-improvise as hard as they possibly can in the next 40 days.
You know what, Stephanie, I want to kick it to you because I do want to know, what is When We All Vote doing to ensure that all those young people who we saw protesting, taking it to the streets, actually take it to the polls? Before you answer that, I do want to encourage people to please drop your questions inside the chat. I have a few that I'm going to get to in just a second. But before I do that, Stephanie, I think it's very important that you speak about how do we take it from the streets and into the polls.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I think that, we can talk a lot about all of the issues that we're facing, and there's a ton. But voting should give people a sense of power. And what we're trying to do is really help to decrease the barriers that are already there. I know that someone already spoke to this about the information barrier being there. And I think that sometimes what everybody does, from both parties, from folks who have been in political institutions for most of their lives, they sometimes don't know how to talk about these issues in a way that people understand. And I think that we overcomplicate things and think that, okay, well, people aren't voting because they absolutely have no interest in it. They're completely apathetic. They don't really care what happens. And that's just not true. People, there literally is an information barrier. About 25% of 18 to 24-year-olds did not vote in 2018. because they missed the voter registration deadline. And for folks like me who work in this space, who have worked in politics for the majority of my career, that to me is a little foreign. Like you didn't hear the voter registration deadline in your state. You had no idea. And people do not know. If you think about the advertisements that you see on television for campaigns,
right,
it's usually for just a candidate.
So much information on a daily basis. We're raising our kids. We're working 2 and 3 jobs. We're balancing a marriage or divorce or whatever the heck is going on in our personal lives, that we're not paying attention to all the information that's out there.
Absolutely. So it's like, it's a simple information about this is when the voter registration deadline is. This is actually what you need to do to get registered. And people don't understand sometimes that you don't have to go to the DMV. You actually can get registered online in most states. There's about 13 states that you can't do it online, which is stupid and unfortunate, but the majority of states you actually can. So there's all of these barriers that we're trying to help to decrease for people with those just simple tools, simple information, simple resources on the how-tos. In addition to that, we know there's a confidence barrier as well. Sometimes people feel like you're saying this is the biggest election of my lifetime, and that feels like such a major choice that I have to go into a voting booth and make these decisions and choices, and I don't feel adequate enough to do that. Our research shows us that. We've had literally people sitting in a room where we know what some of these issues are and barriers are around voting, and confidence around making good decisions is one of them. So we're trying to give the people the confidence that they need to know that they can make those decisions by providing resources like Ballot Ready, which you can find at whenweallvote.org. If you click on voting resources, you literally can see who's going to be on your ballot. You literally can click on every name and research who those people are, what they've done, and make your own decisions. In addition to that, because of COVID-19, vote by mail, voting early in person, voting on election day, all of these things are a question.
Can we just talk about vote by mail really quickly? Because this is the second time this has been brought up. And I'm not going to lie, I requested an absentee ballot, and I really, really wanted to do that ballot. But honestly, I tore it up and I said, I'm going to go in person because I have so much anxiety and anxiousness around the ballot because of everything that I see spilling out in the media. Will my vote count? You know, can we just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all relevant thoughts, right? Because you have people infiltrating the news services and talking about how vote by mail is going to be a problem and how every ballot might not be counted and harping on it. And then you also have, unfortunately, the leader of this country spewing some of this misinformation into the mix, and all you're talking about is vote by mail. So, you know, those resources are on our website. We do help to walk you through that process. Something that I think is really helpful that nobody knows is that the Lawyers Committee has a 1-866-OUR-VOTE number, literally 1-866-OUR-VOTE. You can call them and they will walk you through the entire process. And if you want to vote by mail, great. But you can absolutely go in person. You can wear a mask. You do not have to vote by mail if that's not what you want to do. But also, there's many different options when it comes to vote by mail. You don't have to take it to the post office. You actually can drop it off at your polling place during early voting on actually the day of the election. And there's also drop boxes in other states. So there's a multitude of ways in which you can engage with vote by mail. And if you say I don't want to do it, don't do it. Vote early and vote in person, or make a plan to vote on election day. But I think the critical point is this: just like you do everything else in your life, I know I got to go to the bank today. I know I got to go to the grocery store. I know what I got to do this. You got to make the same exact plan when it comes to voting. You can't just wake up the day of election day and make those decisions, because you got to know where you're going, and you have to have more information than that. And also, because we're in this space and place right now where there are going to be polling places around the country that are shuttered, that are closed down, that you might not have access to, it's so critically important that you make your plan now and figure out how you want to tackle it. But I don't want people to be discouraged about vote by mail. If you want to do it, there's a multitude of ways to get it in, from dropping it off again from a drop box to your actual polling place.
So is it because I heard that it's better to actually drop it off at the voter place versus having it go by mail. Any truth to that?
I would say if you're going to vote by mail, do it now. Okay. Now, don't wait till the deadline of turning it in and risk any type of issues with the Postal Service or with any other services. So No, I mean, look, I don't want to give you less confidence in voting by mail, but our best practices, what all the coalitions, what all the groups, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Lawyers Committee for Civil and Human Rights, the Leadership Conference for Civil Rights, all the groups that work on voting rights that literally have lawyers suing people or suing state governments all around this country right now. Their best advice is if you want to vote by mail, request your ballot now, follow all directions, fill it out, and either take it to a drop box or take it to your polling place. And if you do want to use a mail service, mail it back now. And if you decide that's not going to work for you, absolutely fine. Make your plan if you can in your state to vote early. And we have all those resources readily available. And again, that number, that hotline is a number that
we pinged it down. We put it in our chat so people can see. Speaking of our chat, Brittany Chambers, she wrote inside the chat, how can we leverage data and technology to support advocacy for our people and change the laws? Anybody want to tackle that?
Can you repeat the question?
How can we leverage data and technology to support advocacy to our people and change the laws?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do is actually leverage the data that we get from government. And I think there's a law in the state assembly now and the Senate that's actually trying to get access to particular data points. I think data can be used as a roadmap for us to fix our communities. To be honest, I've been doing a lot of listening to everybody here. And, I wanted to finish my point in reference to Black men. In reference to Black men, we know what the data and we know what the indicators are. Black men have their backs against the wall. So when we talk about Black men being apathetic to this whole process, my question goes back to you all. What has the Democratic Party or Republican Party done to earn our vote? They haven't done anything. And to be honest, with all due respect, I said this at the beginning, this government and this society, we tolerate systemic racism. There's a professor at Brown University, her name is Dr. Tricia Rose, and I challenge anybody to go on YouTube and search for her video on how.
So someone asked, and maybe you could answer this, can you tell us the best path forward to our party of choice to earn the Black man's vote?
If I'm honest, neither one of these parties is good for us. It's funny because we always invest ourselves into these particular parties that never actually do anything for our people. If we go back to history, and this is what we have to be careful of what language that we use, right? We always talk about communities, but Black people, let's not forget, we didn't just come here on a plane. A lot of us were physically taken and put on ships, literally. And I think we forget that sometimes. And for us, as we move forward and as we do things, we need to come together more as Black men to really push this forward. But go ahead, sorry.
I see Cordae and Mysonne shaking their head. Cordae, Mysonne, you want to jump in?
I mean, that's been, I think you heard me share that sentiment that I don't believe any of these parties represent us. So when I hear that, it's definitely, but I just think that there has to be a very intentional, hold on one second, y'all. There has to be very intentional about us creating something that does represent us. But until we do that, we have to find the thing that best represents us right now to the best. And it's sad that we have to do that. But like I said, we actually still have to follow the rules. Unless we decide that we're going completely contrary to this government and we going outside the laws and we ain't following the rules, then we have to fit something. We have to get something that fits for right now. Unfortunately, I have to go. I want to just say one thing. I have to go because we're going outside to protest. And unfortunately, we still have to protest and do things like that. And we might be getting locked up because there's a curfew at 9 p.m. And we're going outside to stand with the people. There's so many people that are hurt, frustrated. The city of Louisville is really outraged right now. And, I don't know if most people know that we've taken up residency in Louisville. So we've been here for the last month and a half. So, we're going out to stand with the people because this right here shows that none of this government works for us. There's nothing that they told us that a wall was more important to Breonna Taylor. The officer was given charges for actually shooting the wall. She was never even mentioned in his indictment. He was never mentioned for anything that he did to Breonna Taylor. So we understand where we are. We are at serious times in our, you know, in our government, in our history, and we have to do something that's completely different. We got to completely radicalize our approach to the way we deal with government, the way we deal with everything, because we need real different change. So I
Cordae,
love all you guys.
we love you too. I want to go around and just get final words. Cordae.
I just feel as though I completely agree with everything that everyone has been saying for the most part. I just feel as though this country and the way that the foundation that it's been built upon, isn't for us. When the Constitution was first written, the only people that could vote was white men who own land. And so I say all that to say it's just disheartening, especially, with the news was happening today with Breonna Taylor. And it's just extremely sad. And a lot of times us as young people, especially as young Black people, we feel as though both parties don't represent us. But it's just imperative for us to know our power and the power in which we have to vote, especially in our local communities. And in this election in particular, it's super important for us to vote and just know our power that we do have.
Thank you, Cordae. Thank you so much. Tez.
Well, right now we have 41 days until the election, and this is obviously a very diverse panel, which is good. Different thoughts. Whether you believe any party has earned your vote or not, whether you are picking less of the two evils, whether you believe in I am a Democrat, period, and I'm voting Democrat no matter what, or whatever that you are. My thing is this: if you are an able body, go to the polls. I just believe this absentee ballot thing that all of this money is being put into, plan your vote, do it early. We're talking to disenfranchised folks. We're talking to people that are not planning this. We should not be hoping that you plan, hoping that you go to the internet, hoping that you get the information, hoping that you get the ballot in time, hoping that you mail it back, hoping it gets to the post office, hoping that your vote is counted. And you never know if it's ever counted. Even if you get the return, even if you know that it made it to the post office, you don't know if it was actually counted. If you are an able body, get your ass up and go to the polls. I mean, I'm being as frank as I possibly can. I'm looking at these advertisements over and over and over and over on liberal media. Plan your vote, absentee. Why are we doing that? If you are able body, put on masks. And if you have to crawl over glass, you go to CVS every day, you go to Walmart every day, you go in and out.
I've been seeing people going to shake their butt at clubs that I didn't even know was open.
So why are we asking people who they're not going 41 days? You're asking them to go do all of this research and get this and get that when they don't do it anyway. They don't do it in that. So if this election is so important as what they're selling, if it's so consequential, if it's so you must vote, then why are we putting all of our risks? Why are we putting so much risk on people being prepared? A group of people that have not been prepared, a group of people that feel powerless, a group of people that have already shown that they're not going to go to the polls even on election day. But now we're asking them to take 2 or 3 additional steps. It makes no sense to me. Everybody should be on one consistent page. Everybody with a microphone. Get to the poll, because that's what Trump's folks are doing. That's why they're going out to these rallies without masks, with or without. This is life or death to them. And we're over here saying, well, maybe if you go and head early and, jot it down, it's not going to happen. We are losing. We are losing this election. And I'm not even a Democrat. And I feel bad because now it sounds like I'm pushing for the Democrat. But it is what it is. I'm calling it is for what it is. We are losing this election right now. And the only people we can blame, not the voters. I'm done blaming the voters. The operatives. The operatives know what they're doing. They know, they've been told this repeatedly, panel after panel after panel after panel. They've listened to Mysonne. They listen to us. They've had, how many more damn panels do you need? You get this ship wrong in the next 41 days, or you lose. Plain and simple. You can vote, blame it on suppression, blame it on Trump, blame it on the white man. At some point, we're going to have to start blaming ourselves, our leaders, and hold them responsible. And the time is now.
So you hear, get your ass out there and vote if you're an able body. Vanessa, final words.
Thank you, Tez. I agree. There's no excuse. Just like we get up every day, we go to the supermarket, we go to work, we find time to do things. we could easily go to the polls. There is so much at stake, and I am encouraging everyone to vote and to be counted in the census. The deadline was pushed up to September 30th, and there's no time like the present to be part of the solution and not a part of the problem. If we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. And there is too much at stake in this country. No candidate is perfect, but I fundamentally believe as a Democrat that yes, we have to take out Trump. People have to act like everything is on the line. So many people died before us for the right to vote, and we take advantage of it. Our people were subjected to poll taxes and literacy exams. And all we have to do at this point is just register using a paper, email, online. And there are so many ways that it's become easier to vote. With all of the voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement happening across the country, Black people, Latinos, everybody's got to get up and vote. Take a friend, take your mom, take your dad, take your man, your boo. Everybody's got to vote. There's no time like the present. We all have to be a part of this because this is really about the generation of future leaders that are looking to us for leadership right now.
Alain, final words. Thank you, Vanessa.
First off, thank you to all the panelists. I really appreciate you all. I think what I'm going to say to call this out, I just want to list some resources for individuals. I think what we all have to think about is how do we build our own community minus these political parties. And I'm not saying to people not to go out and vote. I think voting is important, but don't let nobody punk you into voting for a candidate. Do your research, follow the data, and make your decision from there. But don't ever allow anybody to punk you to vote for a particular candidate. I want to mention the YouTube video that I mentioned from Dr. Tricia Rose on how structural racism works. It's from a video from June 27th of 2017. Really great stuff. And for Black men, if you're still on, I want to recommend a book to you all by Dr. Tommy Curry, The Man Not. We find ourselves, as Black men, we find ourselves at the bottom of every hierarchy. Our demographics and statistics in terms of criminal justice, healthcare, and other systems are abysmal. Billions of dollars has been made, or basically to put this portrayal of Black men as the boogeyman. And I think Dr. Curry's book really highlights what Black men need to read before you step into the polls. And then lastly, I want to shout out Brother Mondale Robinson, who is the founder of the Black Male Voter Project. If you guys don't know who that is, he's a brother that literally has been going around the country. You probably never heard of him, and you should probably know his name. He's been going around the country because the Democratic Party has a very archaic way of doing marketing. I think, honestly, if I'm really honest, the marketing that the Democratic Party has done specifically to Black men is pathetic. It's really pathetic. And I really hope that the Biden campaign can switch things up in the next 40 days. So look out for Brother Mondale Robinson of the blackmalevoterproject.org, who's doing the real work and really engaging Black men in a real intrinsic way. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for having this discussion. I think it's extremely important, and I hope that everybody tonight is encouraged to at least make their voices heard, to make sure that you're registered to vote. Come over to whenweallvote.org. You can get registered right there. Tap on our voting resources hub. You can learn more about finding your polling place and all the information that you need. Make sure that you are armed and ready to go, be that you vote by mail, be that you vote early and in person, be that you vote on election day, but just make sure you vote, because when you do not vote, somebody else speaks up in your space and in your place. And don't stop there. Make sure that you continue to engage in the process, continue to be a part of discussions like tonight, continue to talk to the people in your life about how important their voice is and how important your collective voice is together to ensure that this country looks like the promise that it was supposed to be, and it works for each and every person. So I hope that everybody is leaving here a little bit encouraged tonight, even though we know what we're facing, even though we see what's happening in Kentucky, but just know that your voice matters and you make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you all once again for joining us tonight for a very important and much needed conversation. Remember to register to vote in New York. It is October 9th, and early voting kicks off October 24th through November 1st. Election day is November 3rd. For those of you who don't live in New York, you can go to whenweallvote.org. Whenweallvote.org. We're going to pin that right here to check out the voter registration deadline in your respective states. Okay. Once again, thank you all for joining. Thank you to my panelists of guests. Thank you to all who viewed this video on YouTube. I am your host, TT Torrez, and it's been a pleasure moderating tonight's panel. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank
Appreciate
you, guys.
Thank y'all.
you.
Appreciate y'all. And also, I wanna
God
leave
bless,
with this.
guys.
I left this conversation feeling extremely inspired, and I learned it's a learning process. I learned a lot of things from you all, and I just want to let y'all know how important each and every one of y'all are. And I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate y'all out here fighting a good fight. It feels good to know it's like other people out here fighting a good fight, and
Right.
appreciate y'all, beautiful Black people.
Thank you,
We're all
Cordae.
in this together. That's right.
And
Come
by the
on.
way, Cordae has an amazing song out right now with Rowdy Rich that I absolutely love.
Thank you.
We love you.
Good.
We
Forget the
love you,
song. We gotta
Cordae.
vote. Yeah, appreciate y'all.
We always got y'all.
Have a good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye
All
bye.
right, peace.
Everyone.
Are we good, everybody?